The starship Orion's Grace hovered above the pale blue planet, Earth. Its silver hull reflected sunlight as it drifted quietly through the edge of the atmosphere. Inside the ship, Commander Lyra watched the swirling clouds below with calm curiosity. She was a Zalari officer, tall, slender, with skin that shimmered faintly like polished stone. Her kind was known for logic, science, and peace. They were explorers, not fighters. Lyra's eyes, a soft shade of violet, studied the data flowing across the holographic screen. Earth was a primitive world, young, divided, and unready for the wider galaxy. The Zalari High Council had sent her to make contact and observe the humans. Her task was simple: determine if this species was worth joining the Galactic Union. Her first impression? Disappointment. The data from their satellites showed chaos: wars, hunger, pollution, political greed. Humans seemed emotional, reckless, and disorganized. She had read their history: countless conflicts and endless destruction. They fight even when peace is possible, she murmured softly, shaking her head. Such waste. Behind her, the ship's AI responded in a calm tone. Commander, your landing site is prepared. A human delegation awaits at the Terran United Research Base in the region known as Geneva. Very well, Lyra replied. Prepare the shuttle. As the small craft descended through the sky, Lyra wondered what these humans would be like in person. She expected nervous smiles, hopeful scientists, and politicians eager for approval. Nothing more. The shuttle touched down on a grassy field beside a white domed building. Dozens of human representatives stood in a line, their flags fluttering in the breeze. Soldiers watched from a distance, their rifles held low but ready. Cameras captured every moment. This was history being made. When Lyra stepped out, the humans stared. Her silver uniform gleamed under the sun. The smooth blue mark of the Zalari crest glowed faintly on her shoulder. She looked calm and graceful, like a figure from a dream. A man in a dark suit stepped forward, smiling carefully. Welcome to Earth, Commander Lyra. I am Secretary General Thomas Hale of the United Nations. Lyra gave a polite bow. I bring greetings from the Zalari people and from the Galactic Union. We come in peace. The humans clapped softly, and cameras flashed. But beneath the surface excitement, Lyra could feel their anxiety. Their heartbeats were faster than normal. She could hear them through the translator implant in her ear. After the introductions, the humans led her inside the research base. The air smelled faintly of coffee and metal. Screens showed live images of the landing, while soldiers and scientists whispered from every corner. Lyra studied the humans as she walked. Short, soft-skinned creatures, always moving, always talking. They smiled often, but their eyes showed exhaustion. They are fragile, she thought quietly. How have they survived so long? The conference room was large, with glass walls overlooking the mountains. Lyra sat at the round table facing the human leaders. She activated a small hologram. The glowing form of the Galactic Union crest appeared in the air. The Union welcomes all peaceful species who seek knowledge and cooperation, she began. But we must ensure that those who join do not bring instability to the stars. Humanity's history shows violence and mistrust. Tell me, why should we believe that has changed? The room grew silent. The humans glanced at one another, unsure how to answer. It was Secretary Hale who finally spoke. Commander, it's true. We've made mistakes. Our history is filled with conflict, but also courage, compassion, and learning. We are trying to be better. Lyra's expression did not change. Words are easy, Secretary. Peace requires proof. What would your species do if another world threatened you? If an alien fleet came not to talk but to conquer? The humans hesitated. They hadn't expected such a question. Hale cleared his throat. We would defend ourselves, of course. Lyra leaned forward slightly. With what? I have studied your weapons. They are primitive. Your armies still fight with bullets and explosives. You are centuries behind even our medical drones. I wonder, would you even stand a day against a real war? The silence grew heavy. Some of the military officers clenched their jaws, but no one spoke. Lyra realized she had struck a nerve. She continued softly. On Zelar, we ended war 10,000 years ago. We evolved beyond violence. We have peace because we learned discipline and control. Humanity, by contrast, still seems ruled by emotion. Her translator made the words sound calm, but they carried weight. After the meeting, Lyra walked alone outside the base. The evening sky glowed orange as the sun dipped behind the mountains. She looked around. Trees swayed gently in the wind and the sound of birds filled the air. It was beautiful, but also lonely. She touched her wrist console and recorded her notes. Day 1 observation. Humanity displays potential but remains unstable. They lack unity and self-control. Their weapons are crude. Their leaders rely on emotion. I find no evidence of true warriors among them, only survivors. As she ended the recording, she heard footsteps behind her. Turning, she saw a man in a simple brown uniform. Not an officer or diplomat, just a technician holding a small toolbox. He looked surprised to see her. Oh, sorry, Commander, he said quickly. Didn't mean to disturb you. Lyra tilted her head. It's quite all right. What is your name? Sergeant Daniel Reyes, ma'am. Maintenance crew. He smiled shyly. I was just fixing one of the security panels. Lyra nodded slightly. You are a soldier? Was, he said. Served 12 years in the army? Got tired of fighting, so I fix things now. She studied him curiously. Tired of fighting, that is? Rare among your kind, I believe. Daniel chuckled. Maybe. But fighting's not just about guns, you know. Sometimes it's about keeping things running, keeping people alive. His words made her pause. There was no arrogance in his tone, only quiet strength. She asked softly, Do you believe humanity has warriors? Daniel looked at her for a long moment. We have more than that, he said. We have people who fight even when they know they might lose. Not because they want glory, but because someone has to stand. Lyra frowned slightly. That sounds like foolishness. Maybe, Daniel said, looking at the sunset. But it's the kind of foolishness that built everything you see here. We fall, we bleed, we stand again. That's what it means to be human. That night, Lyra couldn't sleep. His words echoed in her mind. Someone has to stand. She had met countless species across the galaxy, scholars, traders, and diplomats. But this human's quiet certainty unsettled her. She reviewed more files, old recordings of human conflicts, disasters, and rescues. She watched firefighters running into burning buildings, soldiers shielding civilians, doctors working through war zones, fragile bodies, short lives, and yet they kept standing. Lyra's expression softened slightly. Perhaps she had judged them too quickly. The next morning, the base was in chaos. Sirens blared. The skies above turned red as streaks of light cut through the clouds. Lyra rushed to the control room where screens showed strange ships descending toward the planet. Hale shouted over the alarms. Unidentified fleet entering atmosphere. They're not yours, are they? Lyra's eyes widened. No. Those are Vreet cruisers, raiders. They attack frontier worlds for resources. They should not be here. Explosions lit up the horizon. The humans scrambled to prepare defenses. Old missiles, jet fighters, anything they could launch. But Lyra knew it would not be enough. The Vreet were armed with plasma cannons and energy shields. She turned to the humans. Evacuate the base. You cannot fight them. But then through the smoke and chaos, she saw Sergeant Daniel Reyes grab his gear and shout orders to others. His face was calm, steady. Lyra stared at him in disbelief. You cannot stop them, she said. Daniel looked back at her. Maybe not, he replied, loading his rifle. But someone has to stand. And for the first time, Commander Lyra Vall, who thought humanity had no warriors, began to wonder if she had been wrong. The world above Geneva burned red. The Vreet ships, dark and heavy like steel beasts, descended through the clouds. Their plasma weapons cut lines of fire across the sky. Each blast shook the mountains, turning snowcaps into clouds of steam. Inside the Terran United Research Base, alarms screamed. Scientists ran for shelter. Soldiers grabbed weapons and officers shouted over the roar of engines. The peaceful meeting between two civilizations was gone. Now there was only chaos. Commander Lyra Vall stood near the main control screen, her silver uniform glowing in the red light. Her face, usually calm and cold, now showed something close to fear. This world has no defense against them, she said, her voice shaking. The Vreet are pirates, destroyers. They won't stop until everything here is taken or burned. Secretary Hale turned to her, his face pale. Then help us. You have the technology. Can't your ship fight them? Lyra shook her head. The Orion's Grace is an exploration vessel, not a warship. We carry no weapons powerful enough to face even one Vreet destroyer. We came for peace. Then we're doomed, Hale whispered. Lyra didn't answer. She watched the screens. 3 Vrate cruisers had already entered low orbit. Their scanners swept over cities and bases, searching for anything valuable. The rest of the fleet stayed high above, waiting to strike again. And then she saw something unexpected. Human aircraft, small, fragile things with wings and engines, were flying up to meet them. Dozens of fighter jets launched from nearby air bases, leaving trails of white smoke behind. Lyra blinked in disbelief. "They're going up there?" she asked. "Against that?"
"Yes," a soldier beside her said.
"They'll try to slow them down." Lyra watched in silence. The human jets were like insects against the vast black Vrate ships. Plasma bolts flashed across the sky, burning through engines and wings. One by one, the small fighters exploded, but others kept coming. They fired missiles, launched flares, and dove through fire. For every jet that fell, another rose. Lyra's throat tightened. "They're sacrificing themselves." The soldier looked at her grimly. "That's what warriors do." Outside, Sergeant Daniel Reyes moved through the chaos. Smoke filled the hallways and lights flickered as shockwaves hit the base. He barked orders to the frightened engineers. "Get everyone to the shelters. Move." The ground trembled under their feet. An explosion shattered one of the outer walls, sending debris flying. Daniel pulled a young technician to safety just as fire burst through the corridor. Lyra ran toward him, her translator glowing faintly. "You must evacuate," she shouted. "This base will not hold." Daniel turned to her, dirt covering his face. "We can't leave yet. There are still people trapped in the lower labs. I'm not leaving them behind." She stared at him in disbelief. "That is irrational. You cannot save them all." "Maybe not," he said, grabbing his rifle. "But I'll save who I can." Before she could stop him, he ran into the smoke-filled passage. Lyra hesitated. Her instincts told her to stay safe, to observe, not to interfere. But something in her chest twisted painfully. She followed him. The lower labs were a maze of broken glass and flashing lights. Fire suppression systems hissed as smoke poured through the vents. A small group of scientists were trapped behind a collapsed doorway. "Help! Over here!" someone shouted. Daniel and Lyra reached them. Daniel started pulling away debris while Lyra scanned the rubble with her wrist console. "The structure is unstable," she warned. "If you move that beam, the ceiling may fall." Daniel looked at her and smiled faintly. "Then we better be quick." He used all his strength to lift a heavy support beam while Lyra used her device to cut through metal with a beam of light. Together, they freed the trapped scientists one by one. As the last one crawled out, the ceiling groaned and collapsed behind them. Dust filled the air. Daniel fell to one knee, coughing, while Lyra helped him up. "You risked your life," she said softly. "For strangers," Daniel wiped his face. "They're not strangers. They're my people." Lyra stared at him, speechless. On her world, such sacrifice was rare, unnecessary. But here it seemed almost natural. They reached the surface again just as another explosion shook the ground. Through the shattered windows, Lyra saw Vrate landing craft descending. Dark figures emerged, armored raiders with glowing visors and plasma rifles. The humans prepared a defense line around the base. Old tanks rolled out, soldiers took cover behind barriers, and machine guns rattled against the invaders. It was chaos, fire and noise and shouting. Lyra watched as Daniel took command of a small group of defenders. He pointed to weak points, gave calm orders, and encouraged the frightened ones. His voice was steady. "Hold the line. Don't give them the gate." She could not look away. He wasn't the strongest or the fastest, but there was something about him, a will that refused to break. The Vrate advanced with cold precision, their energy weapons cutting through walls and armor. Yet the humans fought on. For every defender that fell, another took their place. From the ridge above the base, one of the Vrate commanders watched with amusement. "Primitive creatures," he growled. "They do not know when to surrender." He ordered his troops to push forward. The plasma cannons fired again, turning the defense line into fire and rubble. Lyra ducked behind a wall as energy blasts struck near her. She saw Daniel fall, hit by the shockwave. She ran to him immediately. "Daniel!" he groaned, trying to get up. "Still here," he muttered. "Not done yet." She helped him stand, her glowing hands trembling. "You cannot win this battle," she said urgently. "You must retreat." Daniel looked at her, eyes steady even through the pain. "Maybe we can't win. But if we make them bleed, if we make them remember, maybe someone else will." His words sent a chill through her. Then, Suddenly, a voice came through Lyra's communicator. The AI of her ship. Commander Vol, this is Orion's Grace. We have analyzed the enemy fleet. Their power cores are unstable. If we overload one of their reactors, it may destroy them all. Lyra's mind raced. That could work. But it requires someone to place the beacon inside their cruiser. Correct? Transmission strength from orbit is insufficient. A manual insertion is required, Daniel heard her. You mean someone has to go up there? She nodded slowly. Yes, but it is suicide. The Vrate will kill anyone who boards their ship. Daniel smiled faintly. Guess that's my kind of mission. Lyra grabbed his arm. No, you will die. Maybe, he said. But someone has to stand. Those same words again, the ones that had haunted her since yesterday. Minutes later, the humans launched their last functioning shuttle. It was small, damaged, and meant for transport, not combat. Inside sat Daniel Reyes, wearing a cracked helmet and carrying the Zolari beacon device. Lyra sat beside him. He looked at her in surprise. You're coming too? She met his eyes. I am Zolari. I observe, I study, I teach. But tonight, she paused, her voice soft but firm. Tonight I will fight. The shuttle roared into the sky, shaking as it broke through the clouds. Below them, the earth burned with streaks of red light. Above, the Vrate fleet loomed like monsters in the dark. Inside the small cockpit, Daniel checked his controls. You sure that beacon will work? Lyra nodded. If we reach their reactor core, it will overload in minutes. Then let's make it count. The shuttle dodged plasma fire as they approached the nearest Vrate cruiser. Explosions lit the black hull. Daniel pushed the shuttle faster, alarms screaming around them. Hold on, he shouted. The shuttle slammed into the cruiser's docking bay. Metal screamed as they skidded across the floor, sparks flying. They crashed to a stop. For a moment, everything was silent except for the hiss of leaking air. Lyra looked at him. We made it, Daniel grinned. Now let's finish this. They stepped out into the dark corridor of the alien ship. The walls pulsed with red light and strange symbols glowed across the floor. Shadows moved ahead, Vrate soldiers coming to stop them. Lyra raised her small plasma cutter. Daniel lifted his rifle. For the first time they stood side by side. The alien who believed in peace and the human who refused to give up. The Vrate roared. Charging forward, Daniel looked at Lyra. You wanted to see a human warrior? She met his eyes, heart pounding. I think I already have. Then the two of them moved as one, running into the fire. The corridor inside the Vrate ship was dark and hot. Red warning lights blinked along the ceiling. Smoke drifted from broken panels and the air smelled like metal and fire. Every step echoed through the hollow passage. Commander Lyra Vol and Sergeant Daniel Reyes moved carefully side by side. The small device on Lyra's wrist projected a blue map of the ship. The reactor core is 2 levels below, she said quietly. We must plant the beacon there. Daniel nodded, holding his rifle close. Then we better move fast. They'll be coming for us soon. No sooner had he said it than heavy footsteps echoed from behind. Lyra turned sharply. A group of Vrate soldiers appeared, their armor glowing in the red light. They carried plasma rifles and moved like hunters. Cover! Daniel shouted. The two dived behind a metal console as plasma bolts burned through the air. Sparks flew. Daniel returned fire, his rifle flashing in short bursts. Lyra used her plasma cutter to slice through a support pipe, sending a cloud of steam into the corridor. The steam hid them for a moment. Go! Daniel yelled, grabbing her arm. They ran through the smoke, down another passage. Lyra's heart pounded. She was not trained for combat. Zolari officers avoided violence. Yet here she was, running through fire beside a human who refused to stop. They reached an elevator shaft blocked by debris. The floor trembled with the hum of engines. The stairs are gone, Lyra said. We will have to climb. Daniel looked up the long metal shaft. Fine by me. He attached his rifle to his back, jumped onto a support beam and started climbing. Lyra hesitated, staring up. The height made her dizzy. Come on, Commander, Daniel called down. Don't stop now. She took a deep breath and followed. Her hand slipped on the cold metal, but she kept going. When she almost fell, Daniel reached down, grabbing her wrist. Got you, he said with a grin. For a moment she stared at him. Human eyes filled with determination, dirt on his face, a faint smile even in danger. Something stirred inside her chest, something she didn't understand. They climbed to the next level and forced open a hatch. The reactor chamber lay beyond, a vast room filled with humming energy conduits. The glowing blue reactor pulsed at the center like a giant heart. Lyra's eyes widened. There it is. They ran across the walkway toward the reactor controls. But the sound of heavy boots followed again. The Vrite soldiers had found them. Daniel turned. Keep working. I'll hold them off. Lyra hesitated. You can't fight them all. He smiled faintly. You keep saying that. Then he took cover behind a railing and opened fire. Plasma bolts flew across the chamber. The Vrite roared, their armor sparking under the hits. One of them charged forward with a blade-like weapon. Daniel blocked it with his rifle and kicked the alien back. Lyra forced herself to focus. Her trembling fingers worked on the beacon, connecting it to the ship's power system. The device hummed as it synced with the Vrite reactor. Almost done, she muttered. Daniel ducked as a blast hit the railing near him. Heat seared his arm, but he ignored the pain. He fired again, aiming for the glowing visors of the Vrite. Two fell, their armor smoking. The third one rushed him. The alien struck him with its weapon, sending him crashing to the floor. Daniel groaned, rolling aside as another blow hit where he'd been. The weapon smashed through the metal floor. Lyra looked up, eyes wide. Daniel! He reached for his knife, blocking another strike. Sparks flew as the blades clashed. The alien was stronger, its claws tearing through the metal. Daniel gritted his teeth, his muscles burning. Then he saw a loose power cable nearby. With one quick move, he grabbed it and pressed it against the alien's armor. Blue electricity flashed. The Vrite screamed and fell backward, smoke rising from its armor. Daniel dropped the cable, breathing hard. That's 3 down, he muttered. How's that beacon coming? Lyra's voice shook, but she managed to say, It's ready. But once it activates, this whole ship will explode. Daniel nodded. Then we better leave before that happens. She looked at the timer on the beacon, 5 minutes. They started running back through the corridors. The ship shook as alarms blared. Red symbols flashed across the walls and the hum of the reactor grew louder. Lyra spoke between breaths. We need to reach the hangar bay. It's the only way out. Daniel nodded. Lead the way. As they ran, more Vrite appeared. The aliens fired wildly, trying to stop them. Daniel used cover, returning shots to slow them down. One plasma bolt grazed his leg, but he kept moving, refusing to fall. Lyra saw it. The way he limped but didn't complain. Her mind couldn't understand that kind of will. Why do you keep fighting when there is no chance to win? She asked. Daniel grinned even as he ran. Because someone has to. The same words again. The same belief that had brought him this far. They reached the hangar bay just as the floor shook violently. The reactor was close to overload. Fires burned across the walls and the air shimmered with heat. Their damaged shuttle sat at the far end. Daniel helped Lyra climb inside. The controls were half broken, but she managed to power them up. Engines online, she said quickly. We can make it. But then the hangar door began to close and the Vrite were sealing them in. Daniel jumped out of the shuttle and ran toward the control panel. Daniel, Lyra shouted. What are you doing? He didn't answer. He pulled open the access panel and tried to force the system open. Plasma fire burst around him as Vrite soldiers entered the hangar. Lyra's heart pounded. She wanted to run out and help, but she knew if she left the controls, they'd both die. Daniel managed to jam the door controls. The massive doors stopped closing and began to open again. Light from space poured into the hangar. Go. He shouted, Get in! She yelled back, I'll cover you. Daniel! He fired at the approaching Vrite, buying her time. Lyra's mind screamed at her to fly, to leave before the explosion, but her heart refused. She jumped out of the shuttle and ran to him. You fool, she cried. We both go. He looked at her in surprise, then smiled. You're starting to sound human. They ran together into the shuttle as plasma fire followed them. Lyra slammed the hatch shut and pulled the ship upward. The shuttle burst out of the hangar, flying into open space. Behind them, the Vrite cruiser glowed brighter and brighter as the beacon reached full charge. From orbit, the Orion's Grace detected the overload. Commander, reactor instability at maximum. Impact in 10 seconds. Lyra and Daniel watched through the shuttle window. The giant ship expanded with a blinding light. A wave of blue fire spread outward, tearing the Vrite fleet apart. One by one, the enemy ships exploded, their debris scattering like dust among the stars. Earth's skies cleared. The invasion fleet was gone. The explosion's shockwave hit their small shuttle, spinning it wildly. Alarms screamed and the controls sparked. Lyra fought to steady the ship. We're losing power, she shouted. Daniel gripped the seat tightly. Can we make it back? She shook her head. The engines are failing. We'll have to land manually. Then do it, he said calmly. You got this. The shuttle entered Earth's atmosphere like a falling star. Fire streaked across the windows. Lyra's hands trembled as she guided the ship through the clouds. Hold on, she cried. They crashed into a snow-covered valley far from the base. The impact threw them forward. Metal groaned, snow flew into the air, and silence followed. For a few seconds, neither moved. Then Daniel groaned and sat up slowly. Still alive, he said weakly. Lyra opened her eyes. Her head hurt, but she was breathing. We made it, she whispered. Outside, snow fell softly around the broken shuttle. Smoke drifted from the engines, but they were safe. For now. Daniel leaned back against the wall, exhausted. That beacon of yours really did the job. Lyra looked at him with a faint smile. It was not the beacon, Sergeant. It was you, he laughed softly. We both did it. She looked out the cracked window at the quiet sky. Perhaps, she said, the galaxy will learn something from this day. He nodded. Yeah, that humans don't quit. Lyra turned to him, her voice gentle. No, that you fight for more than victory. You fight because you care. She fell silent, thinking about all she had seen. The jets that rose against impossible odds, the soldiers who stood their ground, and the one human who refused to leave anyone behind. For the first time in her life, Commander Lyra Val understood what courage truly meant. Far above, the Zalari ship Orion's Grace sent rescue shuttles to the surface. The battle was over, but something had changed, not just in the sky, but in Lyra's heart. She had once believed humanity had no warriors. Now she knew she had been wrong. To be continued. Snow fell quietly over the mountains, soft and endless. The wreck of the shuttle lay half buried in white, smoke still rising from its twisted frame. Inside, Commander Lyra Val and Sergeant Daniel Reyes waited for rescue. Hours passed slowly. The air was cold, and the light from the distant sun grew dim as evening came. Lyra sat near a broken console, her silver uniform now torn and stained. She watched the snow through the cracked window. Daniel sat nearby, wrapping a bandage around his arm. His face was pale from exhaustion, but his eyes were still bright. You should rest, Lyra said softly. He smiled faintly. I'll rest when we get home. She looked at him curiously. You humans never stop, do you? He chuckled. Guess not. It's in our nature. For a while, neither spoke. The only sound was the faint hum of the emergency beacon and the whisper of the wind outside. Then Lyra spoke again, her voice quiet. When I came to your planet, I thought you were simple. I thought humans were emotional, weak, always fighting without reason. Daniel turned toward her, waiting. But now, she continued, I see that you fight not because you love war, but because you cannot stand to see others fall. You fight for life, for hope. She paused, her violet eyes softening. You fight even when you know you might lose. Daniel nodded slowly. That's what makes us human. Lyra gave a small smile. Yes, it does. A few hours later, a bright light appeared in the snowy sky. A Zalari shuttle descended quietly, guided by the signal from their beacon. The rescue had arrived. The ship landed nearby, melting snow around it. 2 Zalari medics stepped out, their silver suits gleaming. They bowed slightly when they saw Lyra. Commander Val, we received your signal, one said. We came as fast as we could. Lyra nodded. There is another survivor, human. He needs treatment. The medics quickly helped Daniel onto a stretcher. He waved a hand weakly. I can walk, you know. The medic smiled politely. You are very stubborn for such a fragile being. Daniel laughed softly. You've got no idea. Lyra followed them into the shuttle. As the door closed and they lifted off, she looked down at the white mountains fading below. The world looked peaceful again, but she knew how close it had come to destruction. Back aboard the Orion's Grace, the crew welcomed their commander with respect and relief. The great ship orbited Earth once more, its hull repaired from the shockwave of the Vrade explosion. The ship's AI spoke gently through the intercom. Commander, the High Council requests your report immediately. Lyra nodded. Prepare transmission. She looked at Daniel, resting on a medical bed nearby. His arm was bandaged and a small oxygen mask covered his face. Yet even in rest there was something strong about him, something she could not describe. I will not be long, she said softly, then turned toward the communications chamber. The holographic image of the Xalari High Council appeared before her, tall figures with calm faces and glowing eyes. They spoke in measured tones. "Commander Lyra Val," said the High Speaker, "we have received your initial report. You have confirmed that humanity is an emotional and unstable species, yet your later transmission indicates admiration. Explain." Lyra straightened her posture. "Yes, Counselor. I was wrong in my first judgment." The chamber fell silent. "Wrong?" one council member repeated, surprised. "Yes," Lyra said. "Humanity is not what we believed. They are flawed, yes, but their strength is not in perfection. It is in their will, their refusal to surrender even when all logic says they should. They are not peaceful, yet they fight for peace. They are not eternal, yet they give everything to protect what they love." She paused, her voice firm but emotional. When the Vrayat invaded, humanity stood against them, even knowing they could not win. They fought with courage I have never seen, even among our kind. The High Speaker tilted his head. "And you believe they should join the Galactic Union?" Lyra took a deep breath. "Yes. Not because they are powerful, but because they remind us of something we have forgotten. The courage to stand when hope is small." The council members exchanged quiet glances. The High Speaker finally said, "Your words are unexpected, Commander. We will consider them." The holograms faded, leaving Lyra alone in the quiet chamber. She closed her eyes, feeling the weight of her words. Later, she returned to the medical bay. Daniel was awake, sitting up, staring out the window at the curve of the earth below. "Nice view," he said when she entered. Lyra smiled faintly. "Yes, your world is beautiful." He looked at her. "Did your people believe you?" "I don't know yet," she said honestly. "The council will decide. But even if they refuse, I will not forget what I have seen here." Daniel chuckled softly. "You sound like you almost like us now." "Almost," she teased, her lips curving slightly. They sat in silence for a moment, watching the blue planet spin slowly beneath them. Then Daniel spoke quietly. "When I was a soldier, I used to think the stars were empty, just cold lights with nothing out there. Guess I was wrong." Lyra looked at him thoughtfully. "And I used to think the stars were full of wisdom, and that only advanced minds mattered. But now I see that heart matters too." He smiled. "So we both learned something," she nodded. "Yes, perhaps that is why our paths crossed." Days passed as Earth began to recover. The destruction left by the Vrayat was great, but the unity among humans grew stronger. Nations that had once argued now worked together to rebuild. Across the world, people looked up at the stars with new hope. The story of the alien invasion and the brave defense spread quickly. Daniel Reyes's name appeared in reports, though he never spoke of himself as a hero. Meanwhile, Lyra continued to assist with recovery. The Orion's Grace shared medical technology and helped repair cities. The Xalari scientists were amazed by human creativity, how quickly they adapted and rebuilt. One evening, Lyra stood on the balcony of the rebuilt Geneva base, watching the sunset. The orange light glowed across the snow-covered peaks. Daniel joined her wearing a new uniform, though his arm was still in a sling. "You're leaving soon, aren't you?" he asked. "Yes," she said softly. "The council has asked me to return and deliver the final decision." He nodded slowly. "So this might be goodbye?" Lyra turned to him. "Perhaps for now." He looked down, kicking at the snow. "You know, before all this, I never thought I'd be friends with someone from another world." She smiled warmly. "And I never thought I'd call a human brave." They both laughed softly. Then Daniel's smile faded. "If your people don't accept us." "What then?" Lyra's expression grew thoughtful. "Then I will speak for you again, because I believe humanity deserves its place among the stars." She looked up at the darkening sky. "When I first arrived, I thought your kind had no warriors. But I was wrong. I met one, and he showed me what a true warrior is." Daniel smiled quietly. "I didn't do it alone. Everyone stood together." She nodded. "That is why you are strong." Later that night, Lyra prepared to leave. The shuttle was ready. The humans gathered to see her off, soldiers, scientists, and leaders. Secretary Hale stepped forward. "Commander Val," he said, "Earth owes you much. Without your help, we would not have survived." Lyra bowed slightly. "No, it was your courage that saved you. I only stood beside it." Then Daniel approached. He handed her a small, worn object, a dog tag from his uniform. The metal was scratched but still readable. "What is this?" she asked. "A reminder," he said, "of the day you learned humans have warriors." Lyra held it gently, her eyes soft. "Thank you." As the shuttle rose into the night sky, she looked down at the small blue planet glowing below. She knew she would never see it the same way again. In the quiet of space aboard her ship, she wrote her final report. Observation complete. Humanity is unpredictable, emotional, and flawed, but they are also brave, loyal, and full of hope. They are not driven by logic, but by heart. And sometimes heart is stronger than reason. She paused, then added one final line. They are warriors, every one of them. Far below, Daniel watched the streak of light fade into the stars. He smiled softly to himself. "Good luck up there, Commander," he whispered. He didn't know if they would meet again. But somewhere in the galaxy, an alien who once thought humans were weak now carried a piece of humanity in her heart. A reminder that courage doesn't come from power, but from standing when no one else will. The Orion's grace glided silently through the void of space. Stars stretched endlessly, distant and cold, yet beautiful in their stillness. Commander Lyra Val stood on the observation deck, looking at the swirling blue of Earth far below. Her fingers rested on the railing, the dog tag from Daniel Reyes tucked safely into her palm. For days she had prepared her final report to the Zalari High Council. Humanity's future in the Galactic Union depended on her words. Yet every time she tried to begin, her mind returned to the events on Earth, the jets rising against impossible odds, the soldiers defending the base and Daniel himself, standing firm against the Vrayet. For the first time in her life, she felt a deep connection to another species, a respect that went beyond admiration. Humanity was chaotic, emotional, and unpredictable, yet they possessed something no other species she had met could match, a refusal to surrender, even when facing impossible odds. Lyra's meditative moment was interrupted by the ship's AI. "Commander, incoming communication from the High Council. They request your final report and recommendation." She nodded, walking toward the communications chamber. As the holograms of the council appeared, she straightened, recalling the first time she had faced them with judgment and doubt. "Commander Val," the High Speaker said, his voice calm and precise. "We have reviewed your preliminary report. You claim humanity possesses qualities that merit inclusion in the Galactic Union. Elaborate." Lyra took a deep breath. "Counselors, I have observed humanity in both peace and war. On the surface, they seem weak and emotional. Their technology lags behind many civilizations. Their governments quarrel endlessly. But I have witnessed their greatest strength. The courage to stand when all odds are against them, the loyalty to protect their own, and the willingness to act even without certainty of survival." The council members regarded her silently. One spoke, his tone questioning. "And you believe this? Courage is sufficient for them to join the Union? A warrior's heart alone cannot protect worlds." Lyra's violet eyes met theirs. "Perhaps not. But courage, hope, and determination, when guided, can inspire more than logic ever could. A species willing to fight for life, for friends, and for principles even when weaker, is a species worth standing beside. Humanity has warriors, counselors, not in the sense of armies or weapons, but in spirit." A murmur spread through the holograms. The High Speaker remained still, then said finally, "Very well, Commander. We will deliberate further. Your recommendation is noted. Humanity's place in the stars may yet be earned." After the transmission ended, Lyra returned to the observation deck. She looked down at Earth, thinking of Daniel. She wished she could speak to him again, to tell him that his bravery had changed the mind of an entire species. Suddenly, the communicator beeped. Lyra activated it. "Commander Val, this is Daniel Reyes," came the familiar, calm voice. "I wanted to say thank you." Lyra smiled, her chest warming. "For what, Sergeant?" "For standing beside me when we were falling apart," he replied. "For believing in something greater than ourselves. Humanity owes you thanks too," she paused. "I only followed your example. You showed me what a true warrior is." There was a short silence, then Daniel said quietly, "When the council makes its decision, I hope you'll speak for us again. We could use someone who knows both worlds." "I will," she promised. "You have changed me, Daniel. And perhaps you have changed the galaxy as well." They both looked at the earth below, its oceans and mountains glowing faintly under the sun. "Will you come back?" he asked. She hesitated, then said softly, "Perhaps one day. But for now your people need to stand on their own." "I understand," he said. "Still, don't forget us." Lyra placed the dog tag against her heart. "Never." Meanwhile, across Earth, the people who had survived the Vrayat attack were rebuilding. Soldiers worked alongside civilians, engineers alongside students. Nations set aside old differences, inspired by the courage they had witnessed. Daniel walked among them, quietly directing recovery efforts. He did not seek recognition, yet everywhere people turned. They spoke of the man who had stood firm when the world burned. Children listened to stories of his bravery, and soldiers found new courage in his example. Through it all, Daniel never boasted. He simply reminded everyone of a truth that had been tested in fire. Sometimes the greatest weapon is not firepower, but the courage to stand and act when it matters most. In the weeks that followed, the Zilari returned to observe. Lyra watched from her ship as humanity demonstrated cooperation, creativity, and ingenuity. She noted how quickly they adapted, learned, and grew. Even their flawed systems had a resilience that she admired. In her reports, she wrote of hope, of spirit, and of a potential the galaxy might never have seen if humans had been judged only by their weakness. And every time she wrote, she thought of one man, a soldier who had taught her more about courage than she had ever known. One quiet evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon of Earth, Lyra sat alone on the observation deck. The blue planet glowed softly beneath her, peaceful and alive. She held the dog tag in her hand, turning it over slowly. Her thoughts returned to the first time she had judged humanity. The words of her report, the cold calculations of risk and efficiency, seemed so small compared to what she had witnessed. Humans were not perfect. They were fragile, emotional, and unpredictable. Yet within that fragility lay a power the galaxy had rarely seen. The strength to rise, to protect, and to inspire. And in that moment, she knew the truth. Humanity was ready not because of their technology, but because of their heart. Months passed. The Zilari High Council announced its decision. Earth was invited to join the Galactic Union. The news spread like wildfire. Humanity celebrated, but those who had survived the Vrayat attack understood that this honor was not a gift. It was a responsibility. They would represent the courage of a species that refused to break, even in the darkest hours. They would show that warriors are not defined only by weapons or strength, but by the willingness to act for others when no one else will. Lyra returned to Earth for the ceremonial induction. She landed in Geneva once more, this time greeted by a crowd of soldiers, scientists, and citizens. Daniel stood at the front, his uniform clean, his posture steady, his eyes proud. She approached him and handed him the dog tag. "For your courage," she said softly. He looked at it and nodded. "It's yours too. You stood beside us even when it was impossible." They shared a quiet moment of understanding. Words were unnecessary. The memory of battle, of fire and fear, and of standing firm together said everything. As the ceremony began, Lyra addressed the gathered humans and Zilari representatives. "Today," she said, her voice calm but strong, "we celebrate not only the courage of a single species, but the power of hope, loyalty, and perseverance. Humanity has shown the galaxy that strength is not always measured in firepower or technology, but in the spirit to stand when no one else will. They have warriors among them, not in armies but in heart." The crowd erupted in cheers. Daniel smiled faintly, standing tall. He had not sought glory, but today the world honored his example. Lyra looked at him, and for the first time, she felt the warmth of admiration that was more than professional. Respect, yes, but something deeper, forged in shared struggle and understanding. "You were right," she whispered to him. "Someone had to stand." "And you did." Daniel gave a small, proud smile. "We all do when it matters most." The sun rose over Earth, casting light across oceans, mountains, and cities. The world had survived, rebuilt, and grown stronger. The Vrayat threat was gone, but the lesson remained. Humanity had warriors, in ways the galaxy had never expected. And somewhere in the vastness of space, Commander Lyra, who once doubted their courage, carried the memory of a human who stood firm when hope seemed lost, a reminder that even the smallest heart can shine brightly in the darkness. Humanity had proved itself. and Daniel Reyes had proved that one warrior can change the course of history.